I decided, why not go to Japan? Minasan, konnichiwa, squishy toke, yokoso. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about why or how I became interested in Japan. So if you like videos like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let's get into it. So I'm going to start by talking about my childhood, because I feel like most people overseas, Japan kind of sneaks its way into your childhood, whether you realise it or not. So that's usually in the form of anime, Pokemon, Tamagotchi, Hello Kitty, Kitty-chan, which for me, I was a huge fan of Hello Kitty. Still am. So yeah, I was always interested in Japan from that point, and I'm sure a lot of people, foreigners, feel the same way. Japan is also really famous for technology and food, and I was very much aware of that. Also, Japan is in my family a little bit. My dad was in the Navy and he was stationed in Japan in the 1970s. So he had been to Japan and he would tell me about it. So I was definitely interested from that point as well. I never really had any intention of ever living in Japan though. I think that's something that's really important because yeah, I could never expect that I would end up here. I definitely loved Japan and wanted to visit, but I never imagined that I would ever live there. It was never part of my plan. So yeah, it was a big part of my childhood, and I really think, like I said, that that's super normal for most kids. I definitely wasn't strange at school for liking anime, Pokemon, Tamagotchis. I wasn't. All kids were like that. We all used to trade Pokemon cards. We all knew it was from Japan. And yeah, so everyone, I think, growing up in the 90s and early 2000s especially knew about Japan and thought it was really cool. So after my childhood and teenage years, it's not that I forgot about Japan, but I was definitely more focused on other things, which, like, as I should be, school and my job. I was definitely focused on those two things. Again, I knew I really wanted to travel to Japan at some point, but when you're early on in your job and your life, you're not really thinking about traveling as much. I definitely never forgot about Japan though. I mean, like I said, Japanese food is extremely popular in the UK, and so I would eat sushi sometimes. Occasionally I would watch Japanese anime, but again, with the amount of time that I had, you know, it wasn't much time, so I couldn't really do that as often as I would like. I think, like I said, when you're in the UK and you want to go on vacation, as much as I would have loved to have gone to Japan, Europe was closer. So that's how that ended up happening. And it probably wasn't until one day I was surfing through Netflix and I found Terrace House that I kind of remembered, like, oh my God, Japan, like, where have you been? So yeah, it was really interesting to watch that show. For me, it was the first time I'd really seen Japanese culture outside of anime and things like that. It was the first time I'd seen people really living in Japan and a bit more about Japanese culture and things like that. What's crazy is you can watch a lot of anime and I really don't feel you have that solid understanding of Japanese culture until you see real Japanese people living in Japan. So when I was watching Terrace House, I was so fascinated by everything. The way that people communicated with each other, the things that they would do in their spare time, the food, obviously. I was just super amazed by it all, and that really reignited my interest in Japan. And I think finding that show came at like the perfect time in my life. During this time, I was kind of lost, I think, a little bit. I had a bunch of free time, which is how I was able to watch so much of this show. And so I decided maybe I should learn a language. And that's when I started learning Japanese as well. So for some people, Terrace House might just be a show, but I think for a lot of people who watch it outside of Japan, it is something that does get you interested in Japanese culture. And for me, obviously the show is in Japanese, so I would watch it and it just inspired me to learn Japanese. And then it inspired me to ultimately visit Japan. So after being interested in Terrace House and then also studying a bit of Japanese, I decided, why not go to Japan? I feel like that's the obvious next step. So I visited Japan and I only went for 2 weeks. And during that time I went to Tokyo, Osaka and Kyoto and I fell in love. Like oh my God. So the jet lag was the worst I've ever had. And honestly, it still is. Whenever I fly between the UK and Japan, for some reason, my jet lag is just the worst. But it didn't stop me at all. I had such an amazing time. It was like a dream. I think the first time you go to Japan, it is just like not what you expected, but also exactly what you expected. It's really strange, but it's incredible. And one of the things that I instantly noticed and instantly fell in love with is the old meets new. There's so many shrines in between like really modern skyscrapers, which I thought was so crazy. I also found it really interesting that you have to look up, especially in Tokyo. So in the UK, if you want to look for a store, you just go to where it says on Google Maps and it's right there in front of you. But in Japan, they're all in tall buildings. So I remember, I think I was looking for a cat cafe, obviously. And I was exactly where it was on the map, but I couldn't see it. And I asked for directions to just these strangers walking past, which again, they were so nice. And you don't really get that in the UK too often. But these people, they couldn't really speak English that well. And my Japanese was really bad, but they were still so, so friendly. And they basically was just like, the cat cafe is right there. It's right there. And then I looked up and I was like, oh my God. To me, that's crazy that you have to look up. And it's also interesting because I feel like in the UK, I'm always kind of looking down or looking straight. I never look up. So to be walking around in a city and having to look up to find things, I don't know why, but that was really interesting to me. Obviously the food was also really interesting too. And I've mentioned this before, but the shopping was and still is my biggest weakness in Japan. There are so many shops that sell so many different things. I've never felt like there was something I couldn't find in Japan. Like really. I know in the UK, shopping is almost kind of pointless. I almost never find what I want and just give up and go online. But in Japan, you can always find exactly what you're looking for. I think my favorite thing was Don Quixote when I first came to Japan, just because the idea of having a store that sells absolutely everything that is also 24 hours, that was just completely insane to me. I'd never experienced that before until I'd come to Japan. Just everything about it was magical. It was like being in a dream. And I always recommend people do Kyoto, Osaka and Tokyo if they have limited time, because I think that that's the best way to see kind of a little bit of everything. Kyoto was incredible because there was so much traditional like things, just stuff, but also modern as well. I'll never forget going shopping, obviously, in Kyoto and just seeing like mountains just to the side. That was amazing. And I remember the first day I was in Kyoto, it rained so heavily that I think if I was in any other country, I would have said like, oh, my day is ruined. Like it ruined my whole day. I can't do anything. Not at all. If anything, I loved the rain because it was so heavy. I was so shocked because in the UK, you think, oh, I'm used to rain. It rains all the time here. But Japanese rain is so different. I was really amazed at how heavy it could be, and me and my best friend were just laughing about it afterwards. I mean, we were soaking wet. We were not prepared, but we just found the whole experience hilarious. And it definitely didn't ruin our trip because we just loved where we were so much. And yeah, I don't know, I feel kind of sad because I live here now, so I get to enjoy Japan and she misses it so much. She's always talking to me like, I want to come to Japan and see you so badly. Do you remember when we did this thing? Let's do that again. So I would say after the first time I came to Japan, at this point I still didn't know that I was going to move here. But I definitely wanted to come back. I was already talking to my friend about our next trip to Japan, and what would that be like? And we never got to do that because I ended up moving here. I did visit Japan a couple more times before I actually did move here. But yeah, it still feels kind of strange now to think that something that started off as simple as playing Pokemon cards with my friends in primary school turned into me living here. And it's interesting too because I still talk to my friends from primary school, and yeah, they think it's crazy too that I live here. Okay, well that's it for today's video. I'm really curious to know what you guys think. Did any of this surprise you? I know that some people might be surprised by Terrace House maybe, and that being such a big part of me ending up in Japan, I guess. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!